General Hospital will reveal exciting details on Friday, February 21, 2025. First, Lulu felt her entire world shatter as she processed the brutal truth. The weight of it settled deep in her chest, suffocating, unbearable. Sam was dead. Not by accident, not by some tragic twist of fate, but by a calculated and deliberate act, an act committed by Cyrus. The poison that had stolen Sam's life, Digitalis, was no mere coincidence. It was an execution, cold and precise, carried out by a man who saw himself as judge, jury, and executioner. But what made it even worse, what twisted the knife deeper into Lulu's heart, was the reason behind it. Cyrus had done it for her. The revelation sent a sickening wave of nausea through her. He had killed Sam under the delusion that he was somehow protecting Lulu or acting in her best interest. The very idea was revolting. Sam had been her own person, strong, fearless, relentless in the pursuit of justice. And now, because of Cyrus's warped sense of loyalty, she was gone. Lulu could barely breathe as she tried to make sense of it all. The guilt crashed over her in relentless waves. Would Sam still be alive if she had never crossed paths with Cyrus? If she had found a way to escape his influence earlier? These questions haunted her, tormenting her with every passing second. But as much as the guilt tore at her, another emotion burned even stronger beneath the surface: rage. Cyrus had stolen yet another life, another person who had meant something, and he had done it with the twisted justification that he was doing the right thing. Lulu finally saw him with absolute clarity. He wasn't just a manipulator, or a dangerous criminal with power. He was a zealot. A man who believed in his own righteousness so deeply that he saw murder as an acceptable solution. He would never stop. He would always find new justifications, new reasons to hurt, to kill, to destroy. And if she did nothing, then the next victim could be someone else she loved. That thought alone was enough to drive Lulu to action. She couldn't afford to grieve, not now. She couldn't let her emotions consume her and leave her paralyzed. She had to fight. She had to be smarter, stronger, more ruthless than she had ever been before. Cyrus had already shown that he would kill for his own twisted reasons. That meant she had to be willing to do whatever it took to bring him down before he could do it again. There was only one person she knew she could trust with this mission: Dante. He had always been the one person who saw through the layers, who knew what she was capable of, and who would fight alongside her no matter the cost. Their past was complicated, tangled in emotions and history that neither of them had ever fully sorted through, but none of that mattered now. What mattered was justice. What mattered was making sure that Cyrus never had the chance to take another life. Lulu's mind raced with the possibilities. She would need a plan. They couldn't just go after Cyrus blindly. He was too powerful, too well protected. He thrived on being steps ahead of his enemies, manipulating situations to his advantage. If they were going to take him down, they had to be careful, methodical, and merciless. She could already imagine the confrontation, the moment Cyrus realized that Lulu wasn't his pawn, wasn't someone who would be manipulated into accepting his twisted version of reality. She wanted him to know, to feel, that his actions had consequences. That he had underestimated her. That Sam's death would be the beginning of his downfall. The fire inside Lulu burned hotter than ever before. She wasn't just seeking revenge, she was seeking justice. She was done being someone Cyrus could use to justify his own monstrosities. She would make sure that Sam's death wasn't in vain. She would make sure that when Cyrus fell, it was by her hand. And she wouldn't stop until he paid the ultimate price. Second, Drew's mind churned with a storm of emotions as he processed the revelation that had been handed to him. The moment Willow mentioned Sasha and Jason's kiss, everything changed. It wasn't just about a fleeting moment of passion, it was about the implications that came with it. Sasha was pregnant, and now, a nagging suspicion had taken root in Drew's mind. Was Jason the father? The possibility gnawed at him relentlessly, unraveling every sense of trust and loyalty he had once believed existed between them. Doubt spread through him like wildfire, consuming every rational thought. He tried to push the notion away, to tell himself that there had to be another explanation, but the pieces of the puzzle were falling into place too perfectly. The secrecy, the tension, the way Sasha had been distant, it all pointed to something bigger than a simple mistake. The idea that Jason, his own brother, could have crossed such a line was enough to make his blood boil. He had to confront him. He had to hear the truth from Jason himself. When Drew finally found him, the tension between them was immediate, unspoken yet suffocating. Every restrained emotion lurked beneath the surface, threatening to erupt at any moment. He had expected Jason to deny it, to shut down the accusations before they could gain traction. Instead, he was met with silence, an unreadable expression that only added fuel to the fire. The lack of an immediate denial was as damning as a confession. Anger surged within him, feeding the sense of betrayal that clawed at his chest. Every memory of their complicated history resurfaced, every instance where they had struggled to find common ground despite their differences. But this was different. This was personal. Family, loyalty, and trust had always been fragile concepts between them, but this moment shattered whatever remnants still remained. Jason's refusal to explain himself, to offer any clarity, only solidified Drew's worst fears. The weight of betrayal pressed heavily on his shoulders, but beneath the fury, there was also a deep, unshakable disappointment. He had believed that, despite everything, there were still lines that neither of them would cross. Now, that belief lay in ruins. Frustration and resentment took hold as he turned away, his resolve hardened. He had come searching for answers, but instead, he had found confirmation in Jason's silence. There was nothing left to discuss. The brotherhood they had tried to salvage was irreparably damaged, and in that moment, Drew knew there was no turning back. As he walked away, a bitter realization settled over him. This was only the beginning. The consequences of this betrayal would reach far beyond this confrontation, and sooner or later, the truth would come to light. No matter what Jason refused to say, the damage had already been done. And when the time came for reckoning, Drew would make sure he was ready. Third, Dante felt the weight of anticipation pressing against him as he received the urgent message from Anna. The moment her name flashed across his phone screen, he knew whatever she had to say would be critical. But nothing could have prepared him for the severity of her words. Cyrus was more dangerous than ever, and this time, his actions had nearly cost Jocelyn her life. A surge of anger erupted within him as he processed the reality of what had happened. Jocelyn had come dangerously close to being another casualty in Cyrus's relentless reign of terror. The very thought sent a cold chill through him, quickly replaced by a fiery determination. There was no room for hesitation. Cyrus had gone too far, and Dante wasn't going to sit back and wait for him to strike again. His hands tightened into fists as he stormed out, his pulse hammering in his ears. Every step was fueled by the fury burning inside him. He had always known that Cyrus was a ruthless manipulator, a man who thrived on control and destruction, but this was different. This wasn't just another power play. This was an attack on the people Dante swore to protect. And Jocelyn, she was family, in every way that mattered. Images of what could have been flashed through his mind as he pushed forward. The thought of losing her, of standing helplessly by as another innocent life was taken, was unbearable. He refused to let that happen. He refused to let Cyrus walk free while those around him suffered. Justice wasn't enough anymore. Dante wanted retribution. He wanted to see Cyrus fall, and this time, he wouldn't stop until that goal was achieved. With every breath, his focus sharpened, his steps quickened. He knew exactly where to find Cyrus, and when he did, there would be no more warnings, no more second chances. The time for patience had passed. Now, it was about stopping a monster before he could destroy another life. And Dante intended to do just that. Fauve, Brennan found himself standing outside Jocelyn's hospital room, a heavy sense of regret pressing down on him like a weight he couldn't shake. The cold reality of the situation had hit him with full force. His attempt to control the narrative, to manage the fallout of Cyrus's growing influence, had done nothing but push the danger further into the shadows. And now, Jocelyn had paid the price. She had come terrifyingly close to losing her life, all because he had chosen to look the other way when it mattered most. He had spent too much time playing politics, thinking that he could manipulate the situation, control it from behind the scenes. He had convinced himself that the right balance of power, the right set of compromises, would keep everyone safe. But Cyrus wasn't the kind of threat that could be contained with strategy alone. He was unpredictable, ruthless, and more dangerous than Brennan had ever given him credit for. And now, because of that miscalculation, Jocelyn had nearly become another one of his victims. As he finally stepped into the room, the sight of her lying there, bruised but alive, filled him with both relief and guilt. This wasn't just another incident, another crisis to smooth over. This was a wake-up call, a moment of reckoning that he couldn't ignore. He had to accept the truth. He had made the wrong call. He had put faith in the idea that Cyrus could be managed, that his movements could be anticipated and controlled. That illusion had shattered the moment Jocelyn's life had been placed on the line. Looking at her now, he knew there was no justifying his past choices. There was no way to undo what had happened, no way to take back the risks he had allowed to build. But there was still a path forward. He wouldn't make the same mistake again. From this moment on, there would be no more calculated maneuvers, no more careful restraint. Cyrus had declared war on the people Brennan should have protected, and now, Brennan was prepared to fight back. As he left the room, his mind was clearer than it had been in weeks. The time for damage control was over. Now, it was about taking action, about ensuring that no one else would come this close to losing their life at Cyrus's hands. He had made one miscalculation too many. He wouldn't make another. Finally, Sasha had spent countless nights wrestling with the truth, the weight of it growing heavier with each passing day. She had always known that keeping secrets came with consequences, but this was different. It wasn't just about her anymore. The life growing inside her carried the potential to change everything, to unravel carefully built relationships and force long-buried emotions to the surface. She couldn't keep it to herself any longer. She needed to confide in someone. And there was only one person she could trust with something this monumental, Carly. The moment Sasha sat down with Carly, the tension in the air was palpable. She had rehearsed the words in her head 1,000 times, but nothing could prepare her for actually saying them. She took a deep breath and finally let the truth spill out. She was pregnant. But it wasn't Jason's child, as everyone had been led to believe. The father was Michael. Carly's reaction was immediate and visceral. Her body stiffened, her eyes widening in shock as she processed what Sasha had just revealed. The carefully crafted illusion that Jason was the father had been put in place to protect both Sasha and the baby, shielding them from the dangers that loomed around them. But now, Carly knew the truth, and that changed everything. As Sasha explained the situation, Carly's mind raced. Michael had no idea he was going to be a father, and given everything he had been through with Willow, the revelation could shake the foundation of his life. More than that, Jason had stepped up, willingly placing himself in the role of protector, despite the complications it would bring. Carly had always trusted Jason to do what was necessary, but this was beyond anything she had anticipated. The realization hit Carly like a freight train. Sasha hadn't just come to her with a secret, she had placed an impossible burden in her hands. The stakes were higher than ever, and now Carly had to decide what to do with the information. Keeping it from Michael could spare him from chaos, but at what cost? Telling him the truth would destroy the fragile balance that had been created, putting Sasha and the baby in potential danger. Carly looked at Sasha, seeing the mix of fear and determination in her eyes. Sasha wasn't just asking for advice, she was asking for guidance, for a way forward in a situation with no easy answers. And as much as Carly hated being blindsided, she knew one thing for certain: this wasn't a secret that could stay buried forever. What came next would change everything.